Hello, this is Lady Boulay, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. Thank you for your support. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your comments, and thank you for your thumbs up. Thank you for all you do to support the channel. And yes, we are commanded to love one another, whether we want to or not, or whether we agree with each other or not. I'm going to admit that I didn't know, and I think there are a lot of other Black Americans that didn't know as well, that we were going to have to explain to the world who we are. We didn't realize that there are people in the world who have decided that we don't have an identity, we don't have a culture, we don't know who we are, we don't know where we came from. Imagine that. So now Black Americans are letting it be known that actually we do have an identity, we do have a culture, and we know where we came from. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the Black American identity. Black American identity didn't appear all at once. It formed over centuries through pressure, survival, creativity, and constant reinvention. We've had to constantly reinvent ourselves. That is one of the things that makes us unique. We have constantly had to reinvent ourselves because of the circumstances under which we lived. It's one of those most distinct identities in the world because it wasn't inherited intact from a homeland. It was built in a place that tried to erase every trace of the people who would eventually create it. So here is the clearest and most grounded way to explain how our Black American identity was formed. It began with forced displacement and cultural rupture. Enslaved Africans came from dozens of ethnic groups, languages, and cultures. But the system of slavery in the United States separated people from the ethnic groups, banned African languages, restricted cultural practices, and forced people into new categories. This meant that the original identities, the tribes that we came from, couldn't survive intact. And they didn't survive intact. The Igbo, the Wolof, the Akan, the Yoruba, the Mende, the Mandinka, etc., 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 they all mingled in together and became a new group of people. So instead of preserving one culture, the enslaved people had to build a new culture together. And that is how our culture began. This is the foundation of the Black American identity. We are not from one tribe. We're not from one language or one culture. We're from many tribes, many languages, and many cultures. And I'm only going to talk about the people who were enslaved from Africa. I'm not going to talk about the ones that were already here because I don't know anything about them. So I'm going to go with the traditional history that I'm familiar with because my family did come on the boat from Africa. When those slave ships hit the international waters of the Atlantic Ocean, their ties, their physical ties with Africa were severed. They were bought and paid for. They were owned by those white people. I must say this again, the physical ties of those African people were severed forever. We carried the genetics, the DNA of many African groups, but we are American made. We were here when this country was formed. So we have an American identity. Our people went from being human beings on the continent of Africa to being chattel slaves in the Western Hemisphere. They had to survive in the environment that they were in. And survival required blending, adapting, and creating. In the absence of shared language or tribe, enslaved Africans created new ways of speaking, new spiritual practices, new music, new family structures, new food traditions, and new social norms. It wasn't assimilation, it was innovation under pressure. The earliest forms of Black American culture came from this blending different tribes, languages, and cultures. And they could not speak their native language in this new environment that they were in, this new system. They were forced to speak the slave master's language. But because they had to find a way to adapt and communicate with each other, they created a new way of speaking. And now they're calling it African American Vernacular English. Well, some people call it Ebonics and probably some other words. But they had to create their own language system, and that is what they did. That was a part of the survival. The new system that they were forced into forced a racial category also, but the people transformed it into a culture. Black in America was created by law, not heritage. It was meant to be a caste and a boundary, a justification for exploitation. But over time, Black Americans turned that imposed category into a shared identity with depth, pride, and global influence. And as I'm going along, I'm showing snapshots of who we are, what we look like, and what we have accomplished. Once slavery ended, Black Americans built towns, founded schools, created churches, formed political organizations and social organizations, developed newspapers, and shaped new artistic movements. This period, known as Reconstruction, is when Black American identity became fully coherent. It was no longer just survival, it was also self identification. Today, the Black American identity is fully formed and a globally influential identity. Black American identity is now cultural, historical, linguistic, political, artistic, and communal. It's not African, it's not Caribbean, it's not immigrant based, it's our own lineage formed on American soil. And it's one of the most influential cultural identities in the world. Now, obviously, I haven't gone through the whole history of Black American identity, but I've given an overview of how our identity was formed. Black American identity didn't come from one tribe or one language. It was built right here in the United States. When the enslaved people were forced into slavery, they came from dozens of cultures. But slavery separated people, banned languages, and tried to erase identity. Instead, something new formed. People created new ways of speaking, new music, new food traditions, new spiritual practices, all from scratch. Not African replicas, not European copies, something distinct. Over time, the label Black, which was created as a caste, became a culture, a community, a political identity. It was created to demean and diminish. They had to flip it and transform it into something of pride and dignity. So when people of African descent come here and rail against the idea that they're Black and they feel shamed by it and diminished by it, they have taken on the colonizers and the enslavers' meaning of Blackness. They haven't taken on our meaning of Blackness, where we have transformed it and made it into something of pride. And we have put our excellence to the term Blackness, and we call it Black excellence. So we don't see Blackness as being dirty and evil and bad. We see it as excellence. So we are shaped by our experience and experiences and by the people that we've been around and the things that happened to us and how we overcame those things. That is how we have developed as a people. We're not lost from some other place. We were forced from another place, but we persevered and we survived and we learned how to thrive in this environment. And this is what has created who we are. We are not some other people's people. We are our own people with our own identity. And this is just the beginning. I will continue to talk about the Black American identity because when we don't tell people who we are, they tell us who we are. So we have to be very firm in establishing and conveying to people who we are, that they don't get to name us and they don't get to identify us. We are our own people. We are proud and we are living in the land that our ancestors built. Okay, y'all, thank you for listening. Let me know what you think about the video and have a good day.